going on, hobby family? It is your boy K-Dub. This is K-Dub's High Five, 5 rapid fire questions with your favorite hobby faces. Now, I'm so sorry for the delay, guys. You guys, if you've been following the story, I recently ruptured my Achilles tendon. So this is my first one back, and I'm so excited for my guest today. He is a hobby editor for Beckett. He is a child of the 90s. He is Ryan Cracknell at Trader Cracks on Twitter. How are you doing today, man?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you?
Oh, I'm recovering, you know. I was just telling you, I feel like this is a good place for me to kind of start moving back into some normalcy in life, which the high five is a big piece of my normal life. So I'm glad to have you as the first guest, man. This is a big deal.
It's an honor.
So how it works, man, I got 5 questions, all hobby related. I'm gonna throw them at you one right after another. Ready to take on the high five?
Sounds good.
All right. First question for you. When you think about kind of your role or kind of who you are in the hobby, if someone doesn't know who you are, maybe kind of answer that question for me, maybe of like, who are you in the hobby?
Who am I in the hobby? Number one, first and foremost, I am a collector. That is where everything that I do during the week, during the day, Monday to Friday, and often Saturday and Sunday. I started collecting back in, early mid 80s, kind of, with ET. Did some Garbage Pail Kids, some wrestling cards, some hockey cards, and it has been nonstop ever since. So first and foremost, I'm a collector. Now I would say, because it's my full-time job, working at Beckett, I like to think of myself as an educator. Letting people know what sets are coming out, what's in them, kind of the ins and outs of them, what to expect, giving them the power so that they can choose what they want to collect. I don't see myself as someone who says, this is amazing, you need to buy this. There's a lot of people out there that do that. I would rather educate and empower people.
I love it, man. I love it. And I would totally agree with you that the hobby needs more of that, because believe it or not, I was just listening to this podcast where we still have a lot of collectors coming into the hobby. Like the boom, yeah, we had a lot of coming in, but there are still a lot of new collectors. So I love what you do, man, and I think that's great. At Trader Cracks, follow my man. He's got the best advice for anyone out there. So all right, you said you started collecting in the 80s, but let's talk about some of your influences in that collecting. Who would you kind of credit as those influences that got you into sports cards?
People-wise,
Yeah, people-wise.
recess at school would be the big one to start with. Just kind of whoever. Well, I don't remember who would have. We all had cards back then,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
we kind of trade them around and everything else. Moving forward, Dr. Beckett, read the magazines back in the day, and that was that educational piece that kind of got me going. And then more recently, I would say just the whole group of online collectors that I've worked with since I started my website back in the 90s, kind of out of necessity because I love baseball and I live in Canada, and everyone up here collects hockey cards,
Yeah.
which I do not. So I had jumped on the internet actually quite early and started
Mm.
trading that way. And those people who I met back then were, they kept me going. If I didn't have that outlet, I probably would have left back when I was in university and probably never came back. So
Hmm.
those would, I would say, no one really specific, I guess, but groups of people and community, which is kind of what I love about the hobby.
So when you think back to recess, I mean, were you getting hockey cards to trade for baseball cards, or was there baseball cards around,
Uh,
or were you just like collecting hockey cards because that's what kids
I
did?
was collecting whatever I could collect, to be
Okay.
honest. Back
Okay.
then, it was, you didn't have so much stuff. I'm a completist. Like, I'd love to like complete is whatever I'm collecting. I want it all. So
Okay.
back then, you could.
Yeah.
Um, I would go to the corner store. All we had was O-Pee-Chee. It was like O-Pee-Chee baseball, O-Pee-Chee
Yeah.
hockey, whatever it was. It was always O-Pee-Chee. So I would want to trade for like the top stuff, the Fleer stuff, because that was like weird and exotic. Because we didn't have it then. Um, I didn't really have structure back then. It was just kind of what was available and looked
Sure.
cool.
Yeah.
And then as the 90s came around, we started having access to more stuff. We had card shows and all that kind of stuff. And I've just evolved ever since.
Hmm. I love it. I love it. All right. Well, let's get into the collecting nitty gritty here. When you
Mhm.
think about collecting for you, is there a grail item out there? Is there a grail card, a card you've always wanted that you've never been able to get, or maybe you got it and it's never leaving your collection? And then why was that the card?
Oh, Man, I have to narrow it down to one.
Well, I mean, it's the high five. There's no rules. Go ahead and feel free to throw whatever you
No,
want.
I'm gonna go by. I'm gonna go by. I think probably the one that I would want, although I will break the rules a little bit, because there's three of them. I have a massive John Jaha collection, like literally every card ever made of his,
Okay.
um, except for one of ones, for
Okay.
obvious reasons.
Yeah.
So 97 Flair Showcase, sorry, uh, tier 0, 1, and 2, the one of ones for those would be my like absolute what I want, because that fits my collection. Broader, a Michael Jordan rookie card would be great,
Absolutely.
but so
What
there we go.
what draws you to John Jaha? What's the connection there?
That was the completest part of me.
Okay.
So back in like 98, 99, the hobby was changing a lot. There was those one of a kind starting to show up. Print runs were shrinking. Um, so I wanted a player that I could collect so that I could trade and keep me active.
Okay.
King Griffey Jr. I loved growing up in, Vancouver Island, Pacific Northwest area. He was the
Absolutely.
man, but I was also in college on a very limited budget. So King Griffey Jr. was out because I couldn't complete him. Even Albert Bell, he was kind of my favorite player at the time. He
Love
had
him.
a lot of the rare stuff, and I couldn't complete that. So I'm just like John Jaha. He's got a cool name, not overly popular, hit some home runs. Let's do it,
I love it.
and went from there.
I love it. I love it. It's amazing how little things can just draw you to a player, and a name like John Jaha is fascinating for sure. So if you're in this watching this video right now and you got a crazy connection to your PC, like just the name of a guy drew you in, please comment. I'd love to read the comments on that. So all right, I know you are a child of the '90s, collector of the '80s, but when it comes
Mhm.
to the products, you got all the money in the world, you can rip one hobby box. Which one are you going to pick and why?
Oh, one hobby box. What am I going to rip and why? If I know that it's absolutely 100% fresh and sealed, I want to, like, from a fresh case and everything, I still want to open a 89 Upper Deck baseball
Okay.
just to pull Griffey. I opened one a few years ago. I bought a box at the National. I'm pretty sure it was searched because there was like, no, I think John Smoltz was the best card that I got in the entire box.
Gotcha.
So I would love that. And then of course there would be, some of that late '90s Fleer Skybox basketball stuff that has the crazy Jordan inserts, the
Yeah,
PMGs, you know, um, just all the cool inserts. I would love to open some of that stuff
for
because
sure.
I love '90s era basketball too as well. And you know, I'll trade Allen Iverson for Steve Nash's all day long if someone has Nash's out there. So
Oh man, you are just like strumming my heartstrings right now. 89 Griffey Jr., my favorite card ever made, and to pull your own, there's no greater feeling than that. And then
mhm.
90s hoops is GOAT in my opinion. So man, you and we're just like connected on the same level right now. So all right, let's get into the last question here. Baseball cards, right? You're
Yep.
talking about collecting baseball cards in the 80s. We're still talking about collecting baseball cards in 2023. What is it about baseball cards that you think just draws people in to collect them? Like what is the draw to baseball sports cards?
Ooh, I think it varies, honestly. For me, I think what got me hooked on collecting, for me personally, I just love organizing stacks of cards. That's what got me kind of hooked. And as I was doing it, I learned about players, I learned about sports, saw cool photos, weird photos, photos of Jose Canseco without his shirt on, just weird, all those sorts of things. It started with just me sorting stacks.
Yeah.
Um, I think, nowadays, obviously, a lot of people see it as an investment thing.
Mhm.
There's a money play, your side hustle, whatever you want to call it. That is another segment of people. And some people, it's the nostalgia.
Yeah.
They're collecting in 2023 because they collected 1987 tops, 1988 tops, 1989 Upper Deck.
Mm.
It is that throwback to when we were younger. And, like I said, if I can open stuff, I'm going back in time rather than the new stuff or the really, really, really old stuff that
Mm.
doesn't connect me. Like the '50s stuff is cool. I like it. There's a sense of art to it. I never saw Mickey Mantle play. So I'm not really, I respect it, but I don't get super excited by it myself personally.
Hmm.
So for me, it's that going back and also, learning about the new players a little bit. But I'm definitely finding that I'm more and more drawn to the older stuff.
Yeah.
And I like cool print designs too. When you see flashy foil and shiny things and everything else, I love that stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely, man. I think for me in collecting, I love the nostalgia piece. Growing up in the 90s, uh, loving basketball, I could name you a lot of the players from that Kobe draft class. To see those cards, it takes me back to the sixth, seventh, eighth grade me. And I think that nostalgia piece is huge, especially for, guys our age still collecting. But it'll be interesting in 20 to 30 years if these younger kids are now ripping 2020 products. I'll be interested to see kind of how the hobby changes or maybe doesn't change as we get older. So fascinating.
There'll be a lot of 2020 product left over, I think, too. But 2020 was a pretty big print run year, I think. And
Absolutely. Oh,
2021 and 2022 looks like, I don't know.
absolutely. That's very true. There's going to be a lot of it out there. I'm sure we'll find warehouses full of it, and
Well,
we'll just rip happy. So
maybe not quite. It won't be close to the 80s stuff,
yeah,
but yeah, but there's a fair bit out there.
absolutely. All right, man. Hey, let me throw a bonus question at you here. You work for Beckett. You've been a part of Beckett for a long time. When I was young, I mean, Beckett and the Bible, which in all honesty, the Bible or Beckett was probably above my Bible as far as things that I read. Uh, those little numbers with prices.
Mhm.
Who the heck came up with that?
Like the price guide?
The price guide in a Beckett. I've always wondered that. Like, who was at their desk thinking, "Oh, this King Griffey Jr. is worth this much"? Because there's no eBay, there's no comps. It's just who was coming up with those numbers.
That was Dr. Beckett and his team back in the day. They would send out, it was like old school. They would talk with shop owners and with card show dealers and everything else. It was this whole network.
Yeah.
If you look in the back of one, there was actually like solicitation of, you send your sales, send us, a message and tell what it sold for. And then they would do their
Compile.
math stuff and make it happen and come up with the range. That's kind of the important thing I think that gets lost. I actually didn't learn it until a couple of years ago, like
Yeah.
well into my tenure at Beckett. If you look in an old one, a new one, there's two columns, the high and the low.
Yeah.
The way to think of it, it's always misinterpreted. When I was a kid, it was the store's going to buy my stuff probably at the low, and
Mm.
then they're going to try and sell it at the high.
Yeah.
It's meant to be a range. So if you open up the price guide, new or old, and you see something is say five for the low column and $10 for the high column,
Yeah.
it's meant to be a range of $5 to $10. So
Okay.
when people are like, Beckett's really like wrong, it's actually not. Like when you look at it as a range, it's actually in there. It's
For
not
sure.
going to get you a specific number, but when you're correlating data for thousands of sales for one card,
Yeah.
that range, there's discrepancies in there, so the range is actually quite important. So
I love it, man. I learned something today. The kid in me is now satisfied. The numbers don't lie. So, hey, we cleared the list, man. We got a high five. Throw it up at the end of the high five. Boom. You can follow Ryan on Twitter at Trader Cracks. Are you also on any other social medias?
I'm on all of them, but I really only use Twitter, to be honest.
I was gonna say, kind of looking around the internet, it seemed like Twitter was kind of your hub. Much like
Yeah.
me at Mr. K-Dub on Twitter. Please also make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Shout out to our high five endorsers, Buck City Breaks and Eric Hecker in the rack of the day. Hey man, I appreciate you coming on, man. This was super fun to chat with you. And best of luck to you this afternoon, man, and whatever life finds for you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for
All
having
right.
me on.
Y'all take care. We'll see you guys next time on the next high five.